Nonfiction November. It is supposed to be this cozy, reflective month of diving into real stories and big ideas. But let's be honest, trying to squeeze thoughtful reading into a month that feels like a sprint to the holidays, it's a lot. And November, it's been a month. Still, I somehow managed to make it through some pretty incredible nonfiction titles this month. Books that made me think and feel and even challenged me a little. How did I pull it off? And were these books actually worth it? I'm Nick. This is Dr. Cranky Pants Reads. Stick around and let's talk about how Nonfiction November shaped up. So it's November 23rd as I'm recording this, and I am strangely doing my What I Read in November video so early because the holidays are coming. As I said in my Channeling My Inner Martha Stewart video, my friends are coming for Thanksgiving, and so I'm trying to get ahead. And this is one that I wanted to get out. It is Nonfiction November, and it has been Nonfiction November, and it has also been a month. I don't think I'm alone in feeling somewhat overwhelmed by this particular month. The national news here in the US, plus the sprint to the holidays, plus my job has been pretty all-encompassing. I'm looking forward to a little bit of downtime as we're approaching the holidays. But as I said in the intro, I did manage to get some pretty good nonfiction books read this month. So I'm going to share 4 of them and then talk through how I'm doing on my to be read challenge for November. I picked some books that I wanted to try to get read this month. We'll see how I'm doing. Spoiler alert, not well. But, progress over perfection, right? Progress over perfection. So during this, because I'm also still knitting away, I'm going to get some work done on the scarf, but we've got some length. Look at that. We've got some things. So as of November 23rd, I have read 8 books this month, which is nearly half of what I normally read. It has taken me an average of 9 days to complete a book, and that is approximately double what it normally takes me to read a book. So my pace is a little off, and I think part of that is the sheer amount of work that I've had to get done this month at work, while also trying to balance all the other things, all of the other things. Of those 8 books, however, there's 4 informational books that were just pretty delightful. So I'm excited to share some of those with you and then catch you up on where I am with my to be read. So the first book that I want to talk about, which I borrowed from the library, so I don't have a physical copy with me, but was Quit by Annie Duke. Annie Duke is an academic, and one of the things that she studies is quitting. Her background, part of her background is as a poker player, and I really enjoyed how this book talks about quitting as not necessarily the negative thing that we always anticipate it to be, and the science behind why, when we get all of these external messages that we should perhaps actually quit, we double down and instead end up losing more than we would have if we would have just quit in the first place. It was a fascinating book in terms of helping me think through, why is it that we valorize grit, this I'm gonna do it regardless of, And we don't honor the notion of knowing when to move on to another opportunity. That was really the big driving message that I got from Duke's book. That idea that when you quit, yes, you are giving up something, but you are also freeing up that time, freeing up that energy, freeing up that brain space in order to do something else. And that is an interesting message for me. I read that book kind of in the same vein of leaving academia at Primer, which I think was last month, because I'm doing some research for a podcast, and it's really been helping me think through some of the ways that we think about achievement and some of the ways that we really pathologize quitting and thinking about quitting in a slightly different way. So I really appreciated that book. It's probably my favorite, like, changed my brain book that I read this month. It was super entertaining, and really has given me a lot to think about. I'm still mulling some of these things over. So, Annie Duke, Quit, super good, super good. Another one of the books that I read for this month was a reread, and I love doing a good reread because it allows me to come at that book at a different space in my life. And the book is Julian Barnes, A Pedant in the Kitchen. I always want to say pendant, but it's not. It's a pedant, like pedantic, pedant. A pedant in the kitchen? Pedant. But that doesn't make sense. I'll figure it out. Anyway, that's the book. And I found this book again. I was rereading this book again because this whole book is about Julian Barnes's work in the kitchen. And like me, he did not have anyone like formally teach him cookery, as he refers to it. His mother never passed that information along. Mine also didn't pass that information along. It wasn't something that you passed on to the boy chillins. And so I never got it. Never got it. And I wish I would have. Wish I would have. Because I still 22 years later am trying to remake my mother's potato salad. I don't know that it's ever going to happen. But what I loved about that book was how thoughtful he is with just the way that he prepares food and thinks about being in the kitchen and how it connects to his larger life as a writer. The thing that drew me to it as a reread were the rules that he had for the cookbooks that he collected. One of the things that he is so concerned about are the details in cookbooks and how to get the best results using those cookbooks as possible. And it's just such a nice kind of reflection, memoir of the kitchen, if you will, that has a particularly British flair to it, but his insights are cutting. I mean, his fiction is cutting. His insights into life and people are always very, very cutting. And so I'm not surprised that this was also a very cutting novel and held up surprisingly well. I think it came out in 2013, if I remember correctly. And even 11 years later, with so much having changed in the kitchen, I think it holds up really beautifully and is an enjoyable, short, culinary themed read. Really, really enjoyed it. It was a good book to come back to, and probably one of his lesser known pieces. Let's talk about number 3, and that is The Teacher Wars by Dana Goldstein. I mentioned this, I think, in last month's video as well. I was rereading it because I realized that I had no notes from it from the first time that I read it. And I read it for the first time like 10 years ago when it came out. And so spent some time this month rereading it and found it really fascinating. This is another book that still holds up. And even though it's a decade old, really was helpful in thinking about how did we get to this space in terms of thinking about teachers and teaching. Goldstein does a really nice job of delineating the ways in which teaching has evolved as a profession, uh, and the ways that for some that profession was a gatekeeper or a gateway, if you will, to the middle class, and how it has fallen behind. I would be really interested in an updated version of this to see what she's thinking about in terms of teaching right now and the fact that we can't we're having really a hard time both recruiting people to become teachers as well as keeping teachers in the classroom. And so thinking about, I would love to know and see some of the connections that she draws between those things that are happening now and the history back then. So Teacher Wars, if you are interested in education, I think it was in my 5 books about teaching and education short, uh, is a fascinating look at teachers, unionization, education, social mobility, surprisingly, and was a good overall read. Highly recommended. The 4th book was The Third Gilmore Girl, which I mean, I love it or hate it. The Gilmore Girls is a thing. I love the Gilmore Girls. It's one of those shows. I can't like deep fried Korean Thanksgiving is a must watch every November. I've already seen it this semester, or not this semester. You can tell where my brain's at. I've already watched it this fall, but I may watch it again. And so I was really excited to get my hands on Kelly Bishop's biography, which follows her from childhood all the way up through Gilmore Girls and into other Amy Sherman Palladino projects. And I have a soft spot for celebrity biographies. I love when it's in the vein of, look, this is not as glamorous as you think it is. And that was really what Kelly Bishop's biography felt like. It felt like she was giving me a window into her life and was talking about the hard work that she was putting in and how that hard work, through some luck, managed to become some success, from her success on Broadway in a chorus line to the work that she was doing on the Gilmore Girls to then other Amy Sherman Palladino pieces. But I also loved how she pulled in lots about her life, her decision not to have kids, which at this point in my life really resonated with me, the many loves of her life and some of the loves that screwed her over and the ones that stayed. Was it a literary masterpiece? Absolutely not. Are there pieces that I will remember? Totally. Was it an enjoyable read? Absolutely. But part of that is I was already invested in this actress. I was already invested in this actress. So it's not surprising to me that I was like, yes, please. Yes, please. I did listen to this book on audio because it's read by Kelly Bishop, and that was a really lovely experience. I highly recommend the audiobook for that one because I don't think that I would have gotten the same sense of the novel, or not the novel, of the memoir, if it had just been me reading it. To actually hear it in her voice was delightful. So, those are my 4 nonfiction titles for Nonfiction November right now. Like I said, I had 8 total. Not all of them were nonfiction, but some of them I have earmarked for other projects. So, with that, let's talk about where I am on my November TBR. I have a short that laid out 5 books that I wanted to try to read this month. And so let's see how I'm doing on them, shall we? Which is not great. Not great. 9 days to finish a book this month. That is crazy. There's 4 here. The 5th one is missing. So let me walk you through. The fiction that I wanted to get through this month is the Kate Atkinson Death at the Sign of the Rook. And I've actually made some progress on this one. This one, I am probably a third of the way through. It's been my nighttime book, and I haven't had as much nighttime reading this month. But I am slowly but surely making progress on that one. The other one that I want to read is Ernest Becker's Denial of Death, and this is my bus book. And I am within striking distance. I am probably, I think I've got maybe 60 pages left in this. Maybe, more like 75, more like 75. So this one is coming along. It did get a little waterlogged. We had a couple of rainy days here in Lincoln, and my backpack is apparently not waterproof. Good thing to note. I've got France on Trial, the case of Marshall Pedant, and I would love to get to this before the end of the month, and Empty Mansions as well. I don't know that I'm gonna have to probably pick and choose. The 5th book that I wanted to try to get to this month was Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport, which I actually hadn't read yet, but I found it at a bookstore when I was in London this summer, and I wanted to get to that as well, but didn't have a chance. So I think some months are just like that. It's not a reading slump. I just didn't have time. Other stuff had to unfortunately take precedence, but I still got 8 books read, so that's kind of good. I think I'm going to try to finish up Denial of Death this coming week and make some headway on Death at the Sign of the Rook. And then my friends who are coming for Thanksgiving, Sarah, Jed, and Theo, we often have lounging around reading days. And so I might start France on Trial if I can get Denial of Death done. So, November. It was an okay reading month. Reading happened. Progress, not perfection. I am pretty happy with the books that I read this month. I really enjoyed them. And I think it was okay that it was a little bit slower. I had some stuff that needed to get done this month. So, I think that's going to be it for this particular video. But I am hopefully going to be back on my regular posting schedule. Thank you for your patience with the Reading Hacks Science of Reading video. Next week, I've got a little bit of a continuation of Nonfiction November, where we are going to talk the long lost art of magazines. And while I know Nonfiction November probably is typically about books, I love a good magazine. And there's so few of them out now, so I have a backstock. So look for a new video on Monday where we're going to talk magazines as nonfiction text. Also, this coming week, I'll have my monthly note to myself coming out to talk about what kind of month it's been on YouTube, what kinds of things I have learned as I've worked my way through the month, and some of the directions that I'm going to go in. So this is my November reading wrap up. I'm Nick. This is Dr. Cranky Pants. I appreciate you. I hope life is good, and I'll see you in the next one.